Welcome back to Milan Recording Studios. My name is James Pavlo Shawcross, and in today's video, what I'm going to be doing is giving you guys an in-depth review of the Yamaha CP88, which is a really awesome keyboard. It came out earlier this year, and I actually first discovered it at the 2019 NAMM show. It was at the Yamaha booth. I was wandering around, and I came across it, and I was like, whoa, this thing is so cool. And the first thing that struck me about it was that I can sit down at it and immediately know how to use it. And that's probably the most amazing thing about this keyboard. I'm just diving right into the review here. The most amazing thing about it, like I just said, is that you can just look at it and know exactly how to use it. It's really well thought out, really well laid out. All the things that you're going to want to use at a moment's notice are there. Reverb has its own little separate section. You got an EQ that you can toggle on and off if you want to. There's a whole separate section for delay. You can do all kinds of things like that. And then there's 3 separate categories for sounds that you can toggle on and off with these switches here. It's just really intuitive, and I want to say that it's probably one of the most intuitive keyboards out there. It's just you look at it and you know exactly how to use it. It's got these little bright colors on it so that you know what knobs go with what categories. It's really, really well thought out. It's also quite attractive too. I do like the logo here in the middle, how the C is connected over the top to the P. It's really interesting and unique. And then there's also a Yamaha badge over here, I believe. And the overall shape of the keyboard is very attractive as well. And one thing I find kind of interesting is that the build quality of it is actually pretty good, but yet it's also very light. Some other keyboards that I know of have a very, very heavy weight and also an incredible build quality, but also they weigh a lot. I think around 70 pounds for some keyboards, like some of the ones that are sitting behind me. However, this one here I believe weighs around in the 40-pound category. I think it's around 41 to 43. I think it's either one of those. I forget which one. But it's really light and very, very easy to tote around, but yet it doesn't feel frail or flimsy. And one thing I like is that even the bottom panel here is actually metal. Most other keyboards don't have that. The ones sitting behind me have a sturdy plastic underside. This one here has a metal underside, which is a very nice touch. The sides of the keyboard, I believe, are metal. This part here, the top of it is also metal. The little front here where you are is metal. Everything's metal. I guess it's aluminum because it's very, very light, but that's kind of cool that it feels sturdy. It doesn't feel all that frail, but yet it's also quite light, so it would be very easy to transport, to move around on stage, all that stuff. It would be very, very easy to move and all that stuff. It's really great. So what about the playing experience for the Yamaha CP88? Well, there's one thing I do want to mention, and that is the fact that this instrument does not come with a music desk. This seems to be a common trend now in the keyboard business, I guess, not coming with a music rest on a stage piano, and I can kind of see why somebody wouldn't want a music rest all the time. Again, I'm going to mention the keyboards behind me. You'll notice I don't have a music desk on either of those. However, both of them came with it, and if I needed one, I have it in storage, so if I need it, I can put it on there. This one doesn't come with a music stand, but what is good is that there are 2 mounting points, one here and one here, that a music desk can slide into. So basically you can purchase a music desk separately if you want one, but if you don't want one, then it doesn't come with one. Now, music desks, you don't always need them, but they are a good thing to have around, and it's kind of strange that keyboards now aren't coming with music stands. I don't know why, but they aren't. So that is one negative thing to the CP88, but the good thing, the silver lining to the cloud, or whatever the saying is that there are mounting points for a music rest if you want a music rest. Another nice thing I like about the keyboard is the pedal unit. Let me grab that really quick. The pedal unit for the CP88 is basic, but it covers all of your needs. It is a single pedal unit, but the nice thing about it is it feels very well built. In fact, I almost just kind of forget about it. You know what I mean? The feel of the pedal is just right. It's not too springy. It's not too soft and flimsy feeling. The build quality of the pedal itself is very good, and I'm not noticing it sliding around very much on the floor. I do have a kind of rubbery floor, but there are 2 very large rubber feet underneath of here that I think would do a really good job of protecting the floor, and they even have these ridges on them that angle backwards, and actually, shouldn't that be the other way around? Because your foot pushes on it this way, but yet those little feet are also angled back this way, so you'd think it would want to move more this way than that way. But they should do a pretty good job of holding onto the floor, and the underside of it is metal, and the overall thing has a really nice build quality. The pedal unit is really, really nice, and for a single pedal unit, which sometimes on some keyboards can be kind of cheap and flimsy, this one has a very nice feel. So now let me get around into the sounds of the keyboard. This keyboard doesn't actually have all that many sounds. There are 3 sound banks, like categories of various sounds. So you've got acoustic pianos over here and a couple of electric pianos. You have electric pianos over here, and then you have just miscellaneous. I think they call it sub. And basically you've got strings and organs and random things in here. So in the grand piano category, there are 4 groups. In the grand piano category, there are 5 different sounds. In the upright category, there's only 2. In the CP sound, there's only 2. And in the layered piano category, there's only 2. Let me reset those all back to 1. There we go. And then in the electric piano category over here, there are, let's see, there are 5 different Rhodes sounds. There are 3 different whirly sounds, there are 3 different clavinet sounds, and there are 6 DX sounds. Of all of the piano-ish sounds, there's actually the most DX sounds, which is kind of interesting. In the subcategory, there are 8 pads and strings, there are 7 organs, actually no, there are 10 organs, there are 7 chromatic percussion instruments, and there are 8 others, which includes basses and guitars and kind of random instruments. So there aren't actually that many sounds on here, which means I'm going to get to run through briefly every single one of them. Oh boy. But on some instruments you have thousands of sounds, but on this one you really only have a handful, which can be nice, and it also can be a negative because you don't have, say, a saxophone. You're not going to have that with this keyboard. You don't have, what else don't you have? You don't have flutes. You don't have a number of other orchestral instruments. So if you want a keyboard that has a massive array of sounds, the CP88 isn't for you. But the reason why it's so easy to use is partly because there are so few sounds on it. You're not overwhelmed by, oh my goodness, I have, 500 sounds to choose from. It's very simple and very direct, and all the sounds that are on here, almost anyway, at least most of them anyway, are very nice and definitely will get the job done. So the default sound that it comes onto when you turn on the keyboard is the CFX sound in the grand piano category in the first group. So let me give you a little demonstration of that. I'm going to play first my original test piece that I wrote to test out pianos, and then after that I'm going to play a little bit of Eric Satie, the No CN number 1. I hope you guys enjoy it. So that is the sound of the default Yamaha CFX sound of the Yamaha CP88. Now, a couple of things I'm noticing, and I'm going to start off with the details of the sound first. I really like the sympathetic resonance that they have included in the very high treble. I'm sure it's technically in the whole piano, but you can really hear it in the high treble. It's a very, very, very nice touch, and it really adds a little bit more realism to the sound. If you turn that off, it will sound ever so slightly different. If you don't have a good set of headphones or speakers, if you just listen to us on like a phone or a tablet, it probably won't sound all that different. But if you do have good headphones, put them on and check this out, and you will definitely sound different, I imagine. One really nice thing about this Yamaha CP88 is, like I said, it's really easy to use. Some keyboard manufacturers will bury something like damper resonance deep inside of some menu, or at the very least make you push at least a couple of buttons to get to the damper resonance. The Yamaha CP88 It's right there. If you want it on, you push the button. If you want it off, you push the button. It's very, very simple, very straightforward, and very easy to understand. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention about the sound of this keyboard is the fact that, as you can hear, it does have a bright edge to it. A real Yamaha CFX would have a rich, warm, amazing tone color, and this doesn't actually have any of that. It's a very bright, simple, straight, direct kind of a sound. And there is a reason that Yamaha went for this, and that's because this is a stage piano. This is an instrument that's designed to be used on stage, where there's going to be a lot of other things often being used. If you think of a regular band, you've got drums, you've got a guitarist, you've got a vocalist, at least one vocalist, sometimes more, and then you've also got a bassist, and sometimes there's multiple guitarists and other instruments thrown in there too. So if you want to have a piano in the mix, a lot of the times, especially in a live scenario, a lot of the wonderful harmonics and tone colors of a piano will get taken out anyways, so many keyboard manufacturers will choose a very bright sound for their pianos so that it can still be heard above the mix, and if the pianist wants to be heard, he can hit the notes louder and really be heard over all of the other stuff that's happening on stage. And if they want to be heard for their solo, they can do that and it will still come through. A more mellow sounding piano can still technically be used on stage, but it might not come out as well. Other manufacturers who have keyboards with a more mellow sound, those type of keyboards, in my opinion anyway, would be very much more geared towards a recording studio where the sound has a lot more detail and all that good stuff. This, however, is a very bright, direct sound being intended to be used on stage. So let me play one other piece here for you. I'm going to play Eric Satie's Nocia No. 1. It's a very open piece that really is going to expose that directness of the sound of this keyboard, and I hope you guys enjoy hearing it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed hearing Eric Satie on the Yamaha CP88. But what I figured I'd do now is move the camera so that you guys can see the controls a little bit better, and then I figured I'd briefly run through all of the sounds and show them to you, and at the same time you guys get to see how the keyboard works and how it operates, which I think might be kind of cool. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that bit of a demo of the CFX sound on the Yamaha CP88, but let's check out some of the other piano sounds as well. Like I said, there's a few enough sounds that I think I'll be able to briefly run through and play a few chords on every single sound here, which hopefully you guys will enjoy hearing. The second sound here in the piano bank is an Imperial, and so of course that should have a bit of a different sound than a CFX. Back to the CFX. The CFX has a bit of a colder, brighter sound, and the Imperial has a bit of a deeper resonance to the sound. And of course, because it's an Imperial, the piano famous for extra bass notes, it has a pretty good sounding bass too. I didn't test out the bass on the CFX sound, but here we go. That's the sound of the CFX's bass. The next sound is an S700, which I think is around a semi-concert grand sized piano, so the bass on that should have a different sound. Yeah, sounds like a smaller piano. And the mid-range on this one is a bit different as well. Kind of has a bit of a smaller piano sound. Then there is a Digi piano, spelled D-I-G-I. What's kind of interesting is that this is here, but there's also a category labeled CP, which has the CP80 sounds. So I don't exactly know what a Digi piano is, besides the fact that it almost kind of sounds like a harpsichord. Go-to harpsichord piece there, but that's kind of an interesting. If you guys know what the real Digi piano was, I'd like to know. Then we have a C7. Now in real life, a Yamaha C7 is a bright conservatory model piano designed to be very powerful, so that should be what this will have a sound like. Actually, no, this is surprisingly warm. That's very interesting, because I've played C7s in real life and I've always found them to be geared more towards power and projection than warmth and substance. That's what I've always found, but that's kind of interesting that this actually isn't. A bit percussive up here, that D in particular, but it is a bit of a darker, warmer sound. Actually quite nice. Then that is the last of the grand piano sounds, and then we can move on to the upright piano category, which have two sounds, a U1 and a SU1. an SU7. I believe an SU7 is Yamaha's flagship upright. That's what I've heard. I've never actually played on one before. I think I have played a U3 before. I think I have a couple of videos of upright Yamahas on my channel. And so as a result, since this is a sample of an upright piano, the bass sounds very upright. Like that. It has a very small, tubby sound, although I don't think that a Yamaha U1 would sound quite like that. I think it might sound a little bit better than that. The SU7 also has a tubby sound, but the rest of the piano I think is actually pretty decent. Here's the SU7. As you can hear, the SE7 is a bit warmer in this range than the U1 was. So those are the two upright sounds, and then as I demoed earlier, we have the CP sounds, the CP80, and then also a second variant of it as well. Let's play in a different key here. Then we have a second variant of the CP80. Then there's a couple of layered pianos here, which are piano and strings, which sound kind of cool. As well as a piano and a synth. Which is really quite lovely. That is the end of the piano section, so now let's move on to the electric piano section, where we're greeted by a 1978 Rhodes sample. So it defaults to having an auto pan sound effect, which when you're hooked up to a single speaker, just does that. So I thought it sounded kind of weird, so I switched it over to the tremolo mid-performance, which dramatically changed the sound, but also made it sound a bit better, in my opinion, when you're using a single speaker. There's also a few variants of the Rhodes. There's also a 75 Rode Funky, which I guess is kind of a brighter, grittier version of the Rhodes. Then we have a 73 Rhodes. Like so. Then there's also a 67 Rhodes Dark, which has a really unusual sound. It's really unlike any Rhodes I've ever heard before. I've never actually played a pre-70s Rhodes, so perhaps that's actually what they sound like, but it's really... very, very different. And then you also have a bright version of the 67 Rhodes. Which is a bit DX-ish, if you will. It sounds very much like the old Yamaha DX. Now, then we move on to the Wurlitzer sounds, which there are a few of in here. We have a Whirly Warm. Then there's a Wurlitzer Bright. The bass in it sounds a bit unusual. But that's the Whirly Bright. We have a Whirly Wide. I'm not really sure what that means, actually. So there's that, and then we also have Whirly Warm, which is back around to number 1. Now here's a really unusual quirk about this keyboard, and I don't know if it's a glitch with this particular one, or if all Yamaha CP88s are like that, but the clavinet section is an octave lower from everything else. Here is the Wurlitzer sound. Here's the clavinet sound around middle C. So is that just me, or is that an octave lower? I'm pretty sure that is an octave lower. Yeah, that's an octave lower. For some reason, I don't know why. But that means that if you want to go ahead and play something on the clavinet, you can't do it in the normal range. You have to move it all up an octave. However, of course, there is also the octave up and down buttons, which means this is where that should be. But for some reason, the clavinets are all an octave too low, and I don't really know why. But that is the clavi B. We have a clavi S. We have a harpsichord. Aha, let's play that song again. Ah, the harpsichord is not an octave too high. pretty good sounding harpsichord sound. And then we're back around to clavy B. So that's really interesting that the clavinet sounds are an octave lower, but the harpsichord section in the same grouping is in the normal octave. I don't know why that is. That's very unusual. So then we come here to the DX sounds, which, to be honest with you guys, I'm not a huge fan of the Yamaha DX sound. However, I am a huge fan of the DX sounds on this, particularly the DX Legend sound. I really like the sound of it. For me, the Yamaha DX has just been such a cliche instrument of the 1980s that every time I hear it, I just go, yep, it's a Yamaha DX. But I really like the sounds on this. They sound almost like they're fresh and new. And the bass on them is also pretty nice too. It's rather usable. Sometimes on DX sounds, they just have high partials down here and they're not terribly usable. But these ones sound really cool. This is the DX Woody. We have a DX F-Tine. We have a DX7-2. And then we have a DX Mellow. So that's kind of cool. And then we have a DX Crisp, which isn't really the sound that I'd use to describe that. I describe it as more of muted, but Crisp is the name of it. But I really like the DX Legend sound. It's very attractive. The vibrato is a little bit intense there, but you get the picture. I really like the DX sounds on this keyboard. So on to the next grouping here, we have pads and strings. This is the default pad. It's called Mellow Pad, and this is what it sounds like. By itself, to me, it doesn't do a whole lot for me, but when you layer it with the piano, it really sounds awesome. You can turn the volume down on it. And I like that a lot. Then we have Spectrum. We have Back Pad. Air Choir, kind of cool. Natural Strings. Now the attack and release on these are pretty sudden, but you can change that over here to make it a little bit more natural sounding, which is nice. We've got warm strings and OB strings. Section strings. And back around to the mellow pad. The organ section on here is also kind of fun as well. We have, I believe, 6 or 7, we have 5 different drawbar Hammond organ type of sounds. What's kind of interesting though is they don't actually default to having the rotary speaker on. It's actually originally off and you have to manually go over to the rotary effect. But this is what they sound like. This is the one called Bright Bars. That's Bright Bars. We have Click Organ, which is one of my favorites. Now the Click Organ is supposed to sound like a Hammond organ with percussion, but what's interesting is that on a Hammond organ, when you hold one note down, none of the others have percussion. However, on this one, that is not true. Then we have Draw Organ 1. We have all bars out, which is honestly my least favorite one of them in here. Then we have Draw Organ 2. What's kind of interesting is that this knob here, it's used to control the speed of the rotary speaker. I'm turning it all the way on and all the way off like that, but actually what the divide point is only around 50%, so you don't have to turn the knob all the way around. This is going to be the slow speed. And then just a little bit over halfway is the fast speed. The chromatic percussion section is kind of interesting. We have a glockenspiel, a vibraphone, a xylophone, and marimba, as well as a few little bell-like synths, but there's actually no celesta, which I'm a little bit disappointed with because the celesta is one of my favorite instruments, and there's no celesta in here. But we do have a glockenspiel, which is similar, which I have it running through the rotary speaker, which is weird. Vibraphone. A very lovely sound there. And then we also have a xylophone, as well as a marimba, which doesn't sound a whole lot different from the vibraphone. I said vibraphone there, but I meant xylophone. We also have a few various pads and synths here. Brightness. Nice bell. Stack bell. And back around to the glockenspiel. In the others category, we have a synth lead. We've got synth lead 2. Then we've got a synth bass, which is one of my favorite sounds on this whole keyboard. I love the synth bass sound. It's really cool. I love the way that bass is really like percussive and clicky. It's kind of fun to me. It's really cool. Then we have electric bass, acoustic bass, steel guitar for some reason, clean guitar, and we also have synth brass, synth lead 1, and that's actually back around to the beginning of the synth leads. I actually forgot I skipped a few organs in here. There's also a 60s combo organ. So that's what that's supposed to sound like. Of course, a Vox Continental. We have a compact organ. Don't know what that's supposed to sound like. And then we have a Panther organ. Which I think sounds really cool. I don't know what that's imitating, but it's cool. There's also a couple of pipe organs in here too. As well as another one. So that is a brief rundown of all of the sounds on the Yamaha CP88. Now I mentioned that there's also a bunch of effects over here as well. There's auto pan, touch wah, pedal wah, compression, and all kinds of other effects that are really easy to access. And then also as well as more effects down here. I guess you can have 2 effects going at once, like phasers and a tremolo. That is really unique sounding. So you can have 2 effects going at once. They're very easy to toggle on and off. As you can see, this keyboard is extremely, extremely easy to use. Now I'm going to go back to the piano section and mention one thing about this keyboard that is interesting, and that would be the action on this keyboard. One of the magical things about a piano's action is that basically no matter where you push on the key, the action is designed so that it feels about the same. So whether you push the key down at the end or you push the key way up here, which you sometimes have to do in certain classical pieces, it's designed to feel as similar as possible so that even if you're playing way up here into the edge of the piano, you don't have to compensate for really anything. On this action, however, when you're playing right in here at the very tips of the keys, you can really feel that it actually starts to get a bit heavier versus out here. And on a piano, it will feel slightly heavier, but this one here isn't balanced quite as well as a real piano's action would be. And that's probably the biggest thing that I'm noticing about this action that really separates it from some of the other keyboards on the market or even a real grand piano. Because on a real grand piano, when you move your hands all the way into here, you can still play the action very, very well, but on here, it does get a little bit heavier and a little bit springy, and that is something that you will have to compensate for. And the action of this keyboard is very responsive, and it does work very, very well, but I find that it works better for more casual types of music like jazz or blues or rock than it really does for classical. I think it's a little bit heavy and springy to really work well for classical, although as you've heard earlier, I can play it. But I really think that this keyboard, the role that this keyboard would have is for a musician who wants to go out on stage and play music like rock or jazz or blues. A classical musician probably wouldn't be entirely happy with this keyboard, and a classical musician would probably also want a keyboard that's a bit more focused on pianos rather than doing lots of other things. But that's about all I have to say about the Yamaha CP88. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video, but before I leave this little scenario over here, I do want to show you, and hopefully you can see it, but I'm going to tell you that the black keys have a very distinct texture, and that's another thing about the action that really makes it a bit unique. The black keys have a very distinct wood grain texture to them that no piano I've ever played has ever really had. Most pianos just have a simple satin finish. Even if the keys do have a wood grain look to them, they're usually very, very smooth, and they don't feel quite this granulated and very textured. But that's kind of interesting that the black keys on this keyboard have a very distinct texture. I think if you blindfolded me and put me in front of a CP88, I'd be able to identify it just by the texture of those black keys. Hope you guys enjoyed this in-depth look of the Yamaha CP88. So, the Yamaha CP88 is a slim, attractive keyboard with a lot of sounds and a really fantastic user interface. Now, I say a lot of sounds because when I was running through them, I felt like that was taking a really long time, but it actually doesn't have that many sounds compared to some other keyboards on the market, but many of them are really good, many of them sound awesome. The piano ones are nice, they have a lot of attention to detail with the sympathetic resonance and stuff like that, and the user interface alone is really fantastic. One thing I didn't mention, though, about the keyboard is that the action, this is the sound of it when it's by itself, not making music. Because that's a question I get a lot of times in my videos, is how noisy is the action on X keyboard? And so I figured in this series I would also demonstrate that if I remember to in the videos, because a lot of people do practice at home with headphones on and they don't want to bother people with a noisy clickety-clackety action. So that's the volume of this. It's not the quietest action I've ever heard, but it's definitely far from the loudest action I've ever heard. It's somewhere in the middle, but definitely closer to the quiet end of the spectrum. So I really hope that you guys have enjoyed this video of the Yamaha CP88. If you like keyboards and you're interested in purchasing this or some other keyboard and you really want to know a bit about them, I have a lot of videos coming out and that may already be out of many of the top brand stage pianos on the markets today. And so if you're interested in that, you might want to go check that out. I've got lots of cool videos, comparisons between the keyboards of the same era. So, you know, many of the keyboards that are out now, when the CP88 is out, I'll be having videos of those, as well as comparisons of the modern keyboards to many of the vintage equipment that they replicate, such as a Fender Rhodes or a Hammond B3. I'll be doing comparisons of that as well. And if that sounds interesting, you might want to think about subscribing and being notified of those videos. Make sure to hit the notification bell to be informed of the uploads. If you do all that, thank you very much. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to go ahead and leave a like on it. And if you do all that, thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.